final type of problem we have here in Lesson 5.4 is one that involves rationalizing the denominator when in the denominator we have a radical that is a part of a binomial. This was that third focus area or target that I mentioned. And so what we have to remember is we can never leave a radical in the denominator. So we learned previously that if we had something like 1 over root 2, all we had to do was multiply the top and bottom of that fraction by root 2, and we would end up with the radical disappearing from the denominator because root 2 times root 2 is root 4, which is 2. Well, it's a little bit more complicated when there's a plus or minus down there with our radical. What we're going to learn is that all we need to do is multiply the top and bottom by another binomial, not just any binomial, but one that is called the conjugate of the denominator. The conjugate of the denominator is just the very same two pieces except a minus or the opposite sign in the middle. And we're going to multiply the top by that as well. And what you'll find then is something somewhat magical occurs in the bottom of the fraction. So on the top, I'll go ahead and distribute. 4 times root 5 is, of course, 4 root 5. And then 4 times negative root 5 is, of course, oops, I think I wrote that down wrong. Yes, I did. That should be root 2. So 4 times negative root 2 is negative 4 root 2. Now on the bottom, when you have a binomial times a binomial, you of course need to FOIL. First times first is going to be square root 5 times square root 5, which is square root 25, which is 5. Outside times outside would give us negative root 10, and inside times inside will give us positive root 10. So they cancel one another out, which always happens when they're conjugates. So last times last will give us negative root 4, which will be negative 2. And notice the radicals have disappeared from the denominator. What we now have is two things on top that are not like terms, so cannot be combined, and we can't simplify them further. And on bottom, we have 5 minus 2, which is 3. That is an acceptable answer, or if you choose, you can break that apart into two fractions. That would be 4/3 root 5. I just divided the first term by 3, minus 4/3 root 2. I just divided the second term by 3. Either of those is an acceptable answer.